Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Now, if you've been with us for the last two sessions, you know we've been really digging into President Isaias Afwerki's latest interview. Today is part 3, the final installment. And seriously, if you missed the first two parts, you probably want to go back and catch up. We covered a lot on regional and national issues. Today, though, we're shifting focus. We're diving into what the president called Eritrea's, well, its highest national priority, the domestic stuff. We're talking development programs, agriculture, energy, you name it. And then we'll pivot a bit to look at Eritrea's, let's say, unique take on diplomacy and media.
Yeah, and what's really striking is just how interconnected it all is. These domestic priorities aren't in a vacuum, they're part of this comprehensive plan. It's about genuinely improving life for Eritreans, but it's also tied directly to how they see themselves on the world stage. It's not just what they're doing, but really getting into the why behind it all, the whole strategy.
Okay, let's unpack that, this big vision for domestic development. The president was clear it's the top priority, no matter what's happening outside. And he mentioned a new phase of programs. What's the thinking there? What makes it new?
Well, he really hammered home the need for clarity and pragmatism, defining national priorities clearly. It's about learning from the past, making sure things are measurable, that they actually have an impact. And crucially, aiming for what he called augmented surplus production. So not just getting by, not just self-sufficiency. The goal seems to be producing more than they need, becoming a net exporter in key areas. That's a pretty big ambition.
Right, so it's not just wishful thinking. It's about the nuts and bolts, the execution. He talked about public participation, regional administrations taking charge, even the defense forces chipping in on big infrastructure jobs, and diaspora investment potential, too. It sounds like a real all-hands-on-deck, whole-nation kind of effort.
It does. And the idea seems to be that decentralizing helps. Pushing responsibility down to those regional administrations, the local level. That could make things more efficient, maybe give people more ownership, and using the defense forces for building things. Well, that's a specific Eritrean approach to using national resources.
Makes sense. So let's get specific. These development pillars. Agriculture first. That feels like the bedrock for everything else.
Absolutely. It's presented as the key pillar. The focus is laser sharp. Boost production, cereals, pulses, horticulture. The belief is the potential is there. Land, water, access to tech. It's about turning that potential into actual measurable food and surplus. Food security, economic independence, that's the core why.
Okay, and here's something that caught my ear. Cotton, reviving this whole integrated industry idea. From the farm right through to textiles, clothes. He named specific places: Kirkabet, Marsa Gulbub, Marsa Teklai, Astra, Tesni, Ali Gadir. These sound like key zones.
They are, spread across different regions, different climates, and it signals that long-term, step-by-step thinking, build the whole chain. And they plan to do the same sort of integrated thing with other crops, like sugarcane, tailored to the region, with targets, timelines.
But it raises a question, doesn't it? How do they make sure these big agricultural plans are actually sustainable, environmentally, economically?
That's where water management comes in. You can't do agriculture without reliable water, especially aiming for surplus.
Right. He laid out quite a strategy there. Dams, big, medium, small, water harvesting everywhere, highlands, lowlands, capturing runoff, boosting groundwater, even looking at recycling seawater and wastewater. It sounds really comprehensive.
It has to be, doesn't it? Trying to maximize every single drop. And they're piloting modern irrigation, things that use less water. What's interesting is adapting tech to their context, like using natural sloughing to move water instead of just pumps. That's practical resource smart. It's how they plan to sustain the output.
Okay, so land and water covered. What about the sea? Eritrea has a long coastline on the Red Sea. Marine resources must fit in here somewhere.
Oh, definitely. Huge potential there. The fish stocks are largely untapped. He acknowledged that. We're talking, 80,000 to 120,000 tons a year sustainably. That's massive. He's also frank about past problems. Facilities in places like Edi, Tio, Jelalalo, key coastal towns, hampered by lack of water, power, transport. But the shift now is fixing that. Upgrading utilities in those specific spots is part of the plan to develop the fishing sector, build the infrastructure to unlock the potential.
Got it. And all this needs power, energy. You mentioned the current setup, the Hertigo grid, plus local generators.
Yeah, the current aggregate is around 120 megawatts, but the future plan is quite different, decentralized. They're aiming for 12 regional mini-grids, a mix of thermal and mainly solar power, each starting around 30 megawatts, so 360 total eventually, with the long-term vision being mostly solar. It's about energy security, distribution, and tapping into renewables.
Makes sense. Okay, beyond resources and power, There was a strong emphasis on people's well-being, housing, urban planning. That feels very direct.
It is. Tackling poor housing in rural areas, shortages in cities. It's linked to creating jobs, building infrastructure too. They're apparently looking again at older housing projects that stalled, focusing now on better design, sustainability, making sure basic services are there. And he called it a short-term priority to speed up. So clearly it's seen as an urgent need for citizens.
And then the social services, education, health, welfare, human capital, he called it, the most valuable resource.
Right. A full review of education, K through university, to make it better quality, more relevant. For health, yeah, they have referral hospitals, but coverage and effectiveness, particularly out in remote areas, needs big improvement.
Yeah.
So the focus is on emergency readiness, public health networks, getting enough trained staff out there, bridging that gap.
And social welfare, still supporting those who can't work, but shifting away from dependency.
Exactly. More focus on creating jobs and even rethinking programs like Food for Work, looking for more long-term solutions. It points to a philosophy, doesn't it? Balancing immediate help with building long-term self-reliance, capacity building, dignity.
Okay, one last piece of the domestic puzzle. Transport infrastructure.
Mhm.
He said it's essential for all the other programs.
And he acknowledged the current state roads, often narrow, overloaded. There's an urgent push to upgrade highways, expand access, especially to remote areas. You need efficient transport for everything. Getting goods, especially farm produce, to markets, keeping prices stable. He even mentions specific places like Haikota and Tesni facing really bad transport shortages, which hits people's livelihoods directly.
Yeah, and that detail about building up capacity to modify, even assemble vehicles locally,
Yeah,
especially rugged 4x4s, that screams self-reliance, adapting to their terrain.
it really does. And notice the priority. First, fix domestic distribution. Get goods around Eritrea at fair prices. Export networks come
To
later.
get the foundation solid first.
Precisely. Internal consolidation before focusing outwards. It fits the whole picture.
Okay, let's pivot then. From the internal engine to how Eritrea engages with the world. Diplomacy, media, politics, navigating a complex global scene. What's the core stance?
Very clear on conflict. Eritrea doesn't want war, believes in tackling provocations early before they blow up. True diplomacy, he said, means clarity of purpose, no reckless talk, refusing to get dragged into fights. It's principled, cautious, quite striking for that region.
And pretty direct about foreign interference, too. Said it benefits no one, namely the UAE, others. The message was, let Sudan, Ethiopia, neighbors solve their own problems.
Yeah, the underlying theme there is strong. National sovereignty, self-determination, not just for Eritrea, but for everyone in the region. External actors, he implies, often just muddy the waters, even if they claim good intentions.
So instead of interference, what's their approach?
Constructive, cooperative, proactive diplomacy. They have their own roadmap, he said. For the Horn, Nile Basin, Red Sea, the Gulf, it's strategic. It means talking, building understanding with neighbors Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Djibouti, Somalia, South Sudan. It goes beyond just IG-80 or the AU to direct talks.
Multi-layered strategy.
Exactly. And reassessing ties with global powers, too. US, Europe, China, Russia. He even mentioned things evolving with Italy, maybe an agreement coming. The goal is partnerships that genuinely help regional stability and development, not just transactions serving outside interests. Very pragmatic.
Which brings us to media. Strategic communication.
Okay.
He said it's tied at the hip with diplomacy and painted a pretty bleak picture of global media disinformation, propaganda.
Right. And the call was for a major shift. Stop just being defensive, get active, strategic, clearly, assertively communicate Eritrea's vision, its priorities, use all channels, traditional, digital. It's not just about batting away attacks anymore. It's about owning and shaping their own story on the world stage. Information as a strategic tool.
That sounds like a big undertaking. Evaluating message impact, boosting tech, training people, building media networks that work alongside diplomats.
It requires serious backing. He talked about needing dedicated research centers, strategic hubs, to monitor, analyze misinformation, guide their positioning. Media institutions need to transform, he argued, from reactive defenders to proactive drivers of the national narrative. He framed it as a core national priority, as vital as building dams or power grids. In today's world, controlling your narrative, that's power.
So wrapping this all up for you, for our listener, what have we seen in this deep dive? A really layered approach in Eritrea. Domestically, it's this intense focus on self-sufficiency, aiming for a surplus in key sectors like agriculture, energy, building infrastructure, boosting social services. And externally, a very assertive diplomacy focused on regional stability, pushing back against interference, and backed by a proactive media strategy.
It's quite a picture, isn't it? A concentrated, integrated national effort to forge its own path, often pushing against the grain. The focus on measurable results, getting the whole community involved, being strategic rather than just reactive. It's a fascinating case study in how a nation tries to assert itself.
And that concludes our three-part exploration of President Isaias Afwerki's interview. We really hope it's given you a clearer, maybe more nuanced view of Eritrea's plans and outlook.
And maybe leaves you with a question to think about. In a world that's so interconnected, so full of external pressures, what can we learn from Eritrea's strong emphasis on self-reliance, on carefully managing foreign influence? What does it tell us about different ways nations might try to develop and maintain sovereignty going forward?
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Hope you found this exploration insightful. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fresh set of sources. Until then, stay curious.